Let us understand how to use JSON file as data source. JSON file could be in two different forms. One is single line JSON file and another one is multi-line JSON file. In single line JSON file, every line will be a record. I can have any structure, but every record will be put in a single line. In multi-line JSON file, the file will be organized and arranged in more readable form, but a single record could exist in multiple lines. And within Spark, while handling these files, there are different ways we can handle. Let us see the example for both these options. I have a sample JSON file for this single line JSON file. Let's see how to read that single line JSON file. Let me get into the Spark shell. First, I am going to handle this zips.json file, where I have the zip information about various city, what state it corresponds to, what is the latitude, longitude, location. So I'm going to read this particular JSON file and convert that into a data frame. So within the scalar shell, I'm going to read this JSON file. So within Spark read function, I have a method called JSON. So I'll provide the path of the file. I'll call the method JSON. So directly it can read the JSON file provided each and every line is available as a record. Now I can register this particular data frame as a table. I can print the schema. So this is going to be the structure, and I can register this as a view. So let me do that so that I can use any SQL query against this particular view. So I'm registering the data frame zip df as a view called a zip table. Now I can use the SQL query. So within Spark session, I have a method SQL where I can pass the SQL query where I'm going to select the state. Then I'm going to count how many city available within each state after grouping the records based on the state. That's going to give me another data frame. Now I can display this particular data frame. So these are all the state and these are all the city count available for each state. And I do have another example for multi-line JSON file. So I have a JSON file where each and every record is spanned across multiple rows. To read this, I have to read the entire file, and I have to pick only the content available within this specific file. So let me read this as a whole text file. Within Spark context, I have a method called whole text file. So it's going to read a directory of text files as a HDFS, and it's going to create a key value pair, each file name and the entire content as a. So let's go ahead and read this particular file. So I'll have only one key value pair. So I'm going to have the file name and the entire content. Now I can get this particular value to have understanding what it is. So it's going to be the file name. So this is the file name, the first element, and then the entire content of that particular file. I'm interested in the content, not the file name. So it's going to be an array, two-dimensional array with the key as the file name and the content. So I'm going to access the second element within this particular tuple. Tuple is a data set where I'm going to have sequence of elements. I can have heterogeneous element within it. So this particular tuple has two elements. One is the file name and the second one is the content. And the index in tuple starts with 1. So I'm going to access the second element of this particular tuple, the first tuple. So let me access that. I'm going to read the entire file, and within each and every element, since I'm reading only one file, I'll have only one element. So within that, I'm going to pick the second element out of it. So I'll get the string content of that particular tuple. Now I can pass this particular string content to a JSON method available, but that is deprecated. So the JSON method available as a part of the data frame reader, it accepts only the data frame. So anyway, let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to use the Spark session, read a JSON file. I'm going to pass the RDD. It will give out a warning saying I'm using the deprecated class. It will still go ahead and create the data frame, but it gives a warning. I can't see what is the specific detail about this warning by giving colon. So the warning is this particular method JSON which takes RDD is deprecated. So we should use a JSON which takes a data set or a data frame. So I'm going to create with this particular RDD I will create a dataset. So within Spark session there is a method called create dataset. Create dataset which takes sequence of RDDs. So I'm going to give a sequence of RDDs and create a dataset out of it. I have transformed this into a dataset. Each and every record is a string. Now I can pass this particular dataset to the JSON method, and that would create me a data frame. Since it gives this deprecation warning, I am doing this transformation of converting that into a dataset and using that within the JSON method. Now I have this particular data frame. I can display this data frame or do any further processing I want. I can take it forward from this particular point. So I have these details. Now I can do whatever I want with this particular data frame. So basically, reading a JSON file, it involves two different ways. It depends on the type of a JSON file, whether it is a single line JSON file or a multi-line JSON file. If it is multi-line JSON file, we have to read the entire content using whole text files and convert that into a dataset and use the dataset as a part of JSON method. And in a single line JSON file, directly I can use the file as a part of JSON method and it would create the data frame.